That's great, Dakota. Yeah, amazing. That's amazing.
Dakota Williams is famous.
How did you feel to be released on bail? Oh, of course, I'm removed.
Her dad was Carl Williams, the drug kingpin and murderer who largely instigated Melbourne's gangland war.
How you going, Roberta?
Her mum is Roberta Williams, a former street kid who married Carl and enjoyed the wealth of the family business, drug making.
Dakota, don't take your tongue out of me. Don't do it. Don't be cheeky.
You cheeky thing.
Her pop, George, was part of it too, also spending his fair share of time in jail.
Dakota, hey, is there pimples on your tongue? Hey, look at me.
Oh, and her babysitter was a hitman.
Your childhood would have to be one of the most unusual in Australia, wouldn't it?
Something like that, probably one of them, yeah.
Is there another setup? That's why I'm probably here, set up from your family.
All the killings, the cops, it was a train wreck.
Madness, yeah. Hurricane on steroids.
If she turns out normal, it's one of the great survival stories of all time.
Yeah.
Are there times when you have looked back and thought, gee, I wish we were just a normal suburban family with none of this notoriety?
I guess so, but then we'd also be pretty boring. Like, I don't know, I'm just used to it. I'm happy with who my family are. I'm not saying it's good, none of it's good, but it just makes me different. It makes me who I am.
It can't be easy being the daughter of a killer immortalised a decade ago on the hit TV show Underbelly.
If this is America, she'd be Al Capone's daughter. It was like show business, you know. It was like Hollywood, it was like gangster time. They were like rock stars in an awful way. I mean, they're dropping like flies. It's a very weird way to raise a child.
At 17, Dakota's now on the verge of adulthood and ironically has her sights set on being a lawyer. She's also seeking answers from her childhood. In particular, her dad's murder inside a maximum security prison.
I just think there was a lot of corruption in places that there shouldn't have been.
Ultimately, Dakota Williams is speaking out tonight in a desperate bid to shake off the sins of her father.
But you are forever Carl Williams' daughter.
Yeah, which I can make a good thing out of it. I can become a good person so people don't think badly of me.
It's very hard to shake off that enormous amount of history.
Yeah.
When Carl Williams married Roberta Stevens in February 2001, he was already a successful drug manufacturer, along with his dad, George. He'd also made his first killing.
Piece, mate!
Carl, you make this your bride.
On the flip side, Carl was about to become a father for the first time.
When I was pregnant with Dakota, we used to lay in the nursery every night. I'd sit in the feeding chair and he'd lay on the floor with his hands behind his head, and we'd talk about our child because we didn't find out the sex of Dakota. We actually thought she was a boy. And he'd come to every hospital visit. Carl was a really good person and had a beautiful heart, and that's what we seen at home.
He might have had a good heart, but his blood could run cold in a split second.
I wouldn't class him as a violent man. He never showed any violence towards us, but...
Roberta, he tried to kill you.
We had our issues, Liam, but...
Well, he shot at you 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, he did, but...
You were pregnant at the time with Dakota.
Yes.
He could have killed you.
I don't think he was aiming to kill me, but he was trying to scare me, yes.
Does Dakota know that? That story?
That I don't know.
You haven't talked to her about that?
I'm not going to sit there and talk to her about stuff like that. She's a little girl. She needs to be a little girl. Remember when we used to come here when you were little?
This is the key to how Roberta has brought her daughter up.
And those ducks have probably still been around from then.
It's her motherly instinct to fiercely protect Dakota by teaching her to completely ignore her dad's violent past.
Have you ever had a chat to your mum about what your dad did?
No.
Never?
No, still not till today. I still haven't really spoke about it.
Until this interview, Dakota has always refused to look back at the murder and mayhem.
For you, being his daughter, has it been hard to live with?
Not really, no. I just couldn't imagine my life any different now.
I've taught her that there's no point in looking back. We don't walk backwards, we walk forward, and we have to move forward.
Tonight, we're seeing Roberta Williams in a different light. She's speaking not as Carl's wife, but as Dakota's mum.
Anything at all?
And for her, the past only brings up shame and guilt, especially the memory of leaving Dakota when she was still a baby to go to jail on drug charges.
Well, you know, it's not worth it. Crime does not pay. Believe me.
Well, you would know.
Yeah. It's attractive at the time and you're not thinking about what the consequences are, what you're doing to others.
For Dakota's dad, that criminal attraction meant he was rarely out of jail during her childhood.
What would be your strongest memory?
I guess just sitting in the visiting rooms and seeing him, that's probably the strongest memory.
Being inside the jail?
Yeah.
Melbourne's underworld violence started in the 1990s, but it escalated a few years later into a bloody drug turf battle between Dakota's family and the Moran crime family. Her dad used to make drugs for the Morans. Then Carl decided to go it alone and undercut them. In October 1999, 18 months before Dakota was even born, the Moran brothers shot Carl in the stomach for his disloyalty, and so began Carl's vendetta.
He sort of grew out of nowhere. I mean, he was a small-time drug runner who suddenly became this self-styled leader.
At the time, Federal Senator Darren Hinch was one of Australia's top talkback radio hosts. The Gangland War was the #1 news story, with Carl Williams its star performer.
I think he used to call himself Mr. Premier at some stage. He got bigger and bigger, and greedier, as they tend to do.
And the greed made Carl a target. When Dakota was still a baby, local thug and hitman Andrew Benji Veneman was hired by the Morans to kill Carl and Roberta.
Dakota was probably a few months old and him and an associate were hiding in the roof of our house.
He was in the roof?
Yeah, and Dakota was newborn and she woke up for her feed and fed her and I was comforting her and rocking her to sleep, and Andrew had told me later that he heard me comforting my daughter and he just couldn't bring himself to do that.
Dakota saved your life?
So Dakota saved me, yeah.
When you heard that, did that amaze you?
Yeah. I don't think I believed it at the start.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's beyond weird what happened next. After being hired to kill Carl, the underworld hitman, a suspect in at least 5 murders, became Carl's right-hand man and trusted friend. It's an insight into how quickly loyalties shift in this dark criminal underbelly.
So, Andrew Benji Veneman, what was he to you?
Like a family friend, we'd call him Uncle Andrew.
You called him Uncle?
Yeah.
Andrew just adored the kids, loved the kids. Every Tuesday night he'd take them to religious education in Sunshine and bring them home and give them their dinner and stuff. He'd do their reading with them.
He babysat Dakota?
Yeah. Had Dakota all the time.
So the cold, calculating and violent hitman was also a caring babysitter.
Don't look at it.
It's an extraordinary juxtaposition, And Roberta says Carl was similar.
He was amazing, doted on his daughter, just adored her. She was his world, his everything. I don't think he'd ever loved until he had Dakota.
I like the way you're feeding the ducks and your dad at the same time.
Watching Carl playfully spend time with Dakota, it's hard to believe that this baby-faced dad ordered the gangland deaths of at least 4 men.
He treated my 3 elder children no different than he treated Dakota. You know, Carl was very fussy with the kids and wanted to make sure they had the best of everything.
This is the dad Dakota knows and likes to remember. The Carl Williams the rest of us know is simply a stranger to her.
I try to put that all aside. Just think of him as my dad. Like, he was a good person to me. I don't really think about the rest of it.
Coming up, as a brutal Underbelly story unfolds,
As I said, it was a very messy scene.
Carl's dark side is deadly and public.
Your dad helped to murder their dads.
I don't want to sound rude or anything, but
Did Daddy's little girl know the real Carl Williams?
How do you balance between your head and your heart, between the murderer and the loving dad?
That's next on 60 Minutes. Today, Dakota Williams is returning to a place that signifies pain and heartache in her young life. It's a nondescript Catholic church in suburban Melbourne. But it's been the scene of some of the biggest gangland funerals ever.
When you think about St. Teresa's Church, what is it to you?
just a sad place. Like, that's the church we go to when family members of mine have passed away, so it's upsetting.
And at each funeral, Dakota has been front and centre.
Tell me a story, tell me a story, tell me a story.
Always first out of the church. Her every move documented by news cameras.
Gee, there's been a lot of funerals there over the years, hasn't there?
Yeah.
So, how did it get to this? Little Dakota grieving the death of so many loved ones. Well, the gangland war exploded into the public arena back in June 2003, when Carl Williams ordered the murder of Jason Moran from the notorious Moran crime family. It was a Saturday morning kids' footy match. Hundreds of families watching on. Moran and his friend, Pascal Barbaro, were sitting in a van at the Oval when they were shot at close range. Executed in front of Moran's own children and 8 other kids.
There are other kids who, just like you, have had to grow up without a dad
Yeah.
because your dad helped to murder their dads. You do get that, don't you? How do you make sense of it?
It's at the back of my mind. It's just not something I think about.
Do you do that for your own well-being?
I don't want to sound rude or anything, but it's just best for me to be not thinking about that, just kind of ignoring it.
It seems this is the only way Dakota can deal with the horror her father caused. Ask no questions and simply ignore it, just like her mum, Roberta, taught her.
I don't want to make her feel guilty for something she didn't do wrong. I don't feel there's any need to do that. She's a little girl. Why should she carry the guilt of her father?
Isn't she old enough to analyse it without feeling guilty?
She shouldn't have to. It was nothing to do with her. She didn't do anything wrong, so she shouldn't have to have that clouding her thoughts. I don't believe she needs to know anything.
Innocent children caught up in the deadly world of criminals.
The Saturday morning at the football, the Auskick murders, how bad was it?
First of all, there were so many children around at the time who not only could have been physically injured, but potentially were going to be mentally affected, emotionally affected by what happened, and secondly, it was particularly messy.
Former Victoria Police Detective Roland Legg headed the investigation into Jason Moran's murder. He still remembers the crime scene that greeted him. It was the first time the seedy underbelly of Melbourne exposed itself in broad daylight to the public.
In your 18 years in homicide, where was that on a scale of brutality?
There was extreme brutality involved. As I said, it was a very messy scene.
He may have been devoted completely to Dakota. When it came to other kids, the Moran children, he was cold, ruthless, I would say heartless.
No, I don't really think he had any thought towards anybody's children, Liam.
But to kill other children's parents so easily.
Understand that, and I'm not justifying anybody's actions, but Carl felt he needed to protect himself, defend himself.
Do you ever think about them?
Often.
The other?
Yeah, often.
Then, in quick succession, Carl ordered another 2 executions within months of Jason Moran's murder, even though he knew police were watching him.
Well, what is that? Astonishing self-confidence? Arrogance, or just stupidity?
A combination of a feeling of invincibility and stupidity.
Did he ever talk about the killings?
No. It's not like we sat around and discussed things that the boys would do or had intentions of doing.
So you never had an opportunity to say to him, listen, hang on a minute, you've got a little baby girl there in the crib. Do you really want to be going out?
He wouldn't have listened.
Murdering people?
Even if I had the time to say that.
But he just went off and did whatever he wanted to.
Yeah, Carl wasn't one you could control.
After his 5-month killing rampage, at the end of 2003, Carl was flaunting his freedom at police, who didn't have enough evidence to charge him.
Clearly there was a genuine frustration. Lives were being lost.
Give us a bit of insight into the atmosphere in police ranks during that time.
There was a fear there that these people were so prepared to kill that they appeared to have little regard for the safety of innocent people around them.
How do you balance between your head and your heart, between the murderer and the loving dad?
I don't know, I just don't really focus on the other side that most people see.
But is it because you only want to see your dad as that loving person?
I don't think I could see him any different.
Dakota sees Carl as a good father, a loving father.
Yeah.
But she's only a kid. She's deluded, isn't she?
Not deluded, I wouldn't use that word, Liam. I'd say it's a little girl who only knows her dad as her dad.
Coming up, growing up gangster.
When did you first become aware that your father was a notorious criminal?
Just bit by bit, just started to make sense.
And a christening party
Was that all drug money?
like no other.
Yeah, I couldn't say it wasn't. She received a lot of money as gifts for her baptism.
When you say a lot, what?
More than $50,000, $60,000, $70,000.
Just at the party?
Yeah.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Like most teenagers, Dakota Williams' Instagram account shows off a confident young woman.
How many followers do you have on Instagram now?
Roughly 6,000 now.
6,000. Are you worried that people could be your friend or try to be your friend because of who your dad was?
I guess I just don't really let people in that easily. Yeah, I think people like me for me.
Has it been a problem for you at all as a child and as a teenager, living under the spectre of your family name?
Not really. Just when things come up in the news, sometimes it's a bit annoying if it's not good. It just makes me look bad.
That reputation that surrounds her, doesn't it?
It interests people, yeah, and it does.
She can't escape that.
No.
Given the extent of that criminal environment that she's grown up in, how can she possibly turn out normal?
Because it wasn't like things were brought into her household, or it wasn't like she grew up around people doing bad things in front of her.
But is it hot? Can you check the weather?
And, just like most teenagers, Dakota is clearly not the worldly, sultry Insta-girl she portrays.
Dubai to Melbourne is 13 hours.
There's much more to her than that.
I just want to make sure that things I'm saying aren't going to, like, hurt anyone's feelings.
You don't want to upset anybody.
Yeah. I just don't want anyone to think, oh, like, that's so wrong. Why does she think like that? Like, what a silly girl, you know?
Yeah.
Because I don't mean to come across that way.
So you're not your father's daughter.
Before all the funerals, back in the beginning, this church was a happy place. In December 2003, Dakota's christening was a celebration for Carl in more ways than one.
That's all right.
After all, he thought he'd gotten away with ordering 3 murders.
When did you first become aware that your father was a notorious criminal?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Just like bit by bit, like just started to make sense.
Who's that cutie?
Strangely, this is the first time Dakota has ever seen the video of her christening.
Quite like that dummy.
Yeah, I loved it.
Can you hold this up there like that? Just like
Charged with threatening to kill a police officer, Carl had been released from prison on bail just days earlier. Yet here, he looks every bit the concerned dad.
and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
As the priest douses young Dakota's head in water. But it was the party afterwards at Melbourne's Crown Casino that proved the arrogance of Carl Williams, who clearly thought he was beyond scrutiny.
Were you really dressed in a $7,000 outfit?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
And you dressed Dakota in a $4,000 dress?
Yeah, I did.
You were really living it up.
Well, you can look at it both ways, Liam. She was my baby.
I've been asked to make a special thank you, and a special thank you that Carl could be with us all tonight.
Here, the Williams family flaunted their wealth and Carl's freedom.
3 cheese. A bit.
They even hired Australia's biggest pop sensation at the time, Vanessa Amorosi.
Was that all drug money?
Yeah, I couldn't say it wasn't, no. Yeah, of course, I'd be lying if I said no.
And the christening was lucrative for little Dakota.
She received a lot of money as gifts for her baptism, but a real lot of money.
When you say a lot, what?
More than $50,000, $60,000, $70,000.
Just at the party?
Yeah.
Watching on from afar, former Victoria Police Detective Roland Legg found the excess and Carl's freedom a bitter pill to swallow.
I think he got carried away with his power.
But he must have somehow thought, I'm never going to get caught for this.
I think to a certain extent he probably did feel some invincibility with the fact that probably felt as if he had all bases covered.
But it would be months before Carl's invincible bubble burst.
Hello, Carl.
In the meantime, the party continued. In January 2004, Dakota went on her first family holiday, complete with her grandparents and Carl's hitman, Uncle Andrew Veneman.
I thought, you're on bail, what are you doing? How did you get leave to go there? And how could this guy who's awaiting serious charges be up there swanning around on the Gold Coast?
That's right, Carl Williams was still on bail for the charge of threatening to kill a police officer. So the trip made headlines with these paparazzi snaps. One of Australia's former top shock jocks, Darren Hinch, made a big deal out of it when the story broke.
Carl Williams, good afternoon. How can a person charged with these serious offences be allowed to leave Victoria?
I've never ever killed it. I've never had nothing to do with no violence.
He got very indignant, you know. I'm entitled, you know, I'm on holiday, and my family's up here, and Benji's here, and, you know what I mean? You take a hitman to the Gold Coast, you know, it's just bizarre.
You tell me I don't get involved in nothing.
That was the infamous interview.
That's right, yes, the one they used in Underbelly. Aren't you scared you may get knocked yourself?
No, I don't. Not really. I've got nothing to. I've got no enemies anywhere.
I said something like, I said, you have insurance?
No, I've got no life insurance.
Well, I think you should get some.
You reckon?
I reckon. I asked him what business he was in. How did he make his money? He said, I dabble in jewellery.
I get jewellery for people. I do a lot of odds and ends. So
you get jewellery for people? What, you steal it?
No, I don't steal it. No, I'm not a thief. Certainly not a thief.
You don't live this lifestyle, you know, selling a few necklaces.
2 men, 1 dead, 1 shot.
A few months later, in March 2004, Lewis Moran, the patriarch of the Moran crime family, was shot dead. Dakota's dad ordered the murder just after her 3rd birthday.
I'm not, you know, being critical, but there'll be a lot of other people who will say, well, hang on a minute, you know, he was an absolute scumbag.
I'm not saying my dad was a bad person, like, I don't think that, but I understand where they're coming from. And I see people saying, like, oh, it's not her fault, like, none of it's her fault, which is a good thing that they understand that.
Are you, in a way, ashamed of being Carl Williams' daughter?
No, not at all. I guess if I do good things with myself and I'm a reflection of my parents, so then people will hopefully understand that besides everything else, put that aside, they are good people. He was a good person. I'm a reflection of them and I am a good person.
Dakota, with all due respect to you, though, the murders that he was responsible for, can you be a good person and still be a murderer?
Coming up, a bizarre childhood spent visiting prison.
I just thought for me, like, that's just normal.
I think you must have been the only kid in the world to get 2 letters in one day from a father and a grandfather in the same prison.
Dakota's dreaming big.
Yeah, what are we going to do? Not allow her to be a member of the bar because she's Roberta and Carl Williams' daughter? That'd be discrimination, wouldn't it?
And now she wants answers. Who ordered the hit on Dad?
Everyone, like, deserves to know the truth.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
Mr. Williams, would you like to say anything about today's application?
In 2004, the Williams family were in court on an almost weekly basis.
Carl, can you please tell us anything about what's happened? Carl, do you know this?
Tagging along in her pram and desperately sucking her dummy was Dakota.
You can see those pictures of your mum sort of scurrying away and tucking you under her arm. Did you ever ask your mum, you know, what's going on? How come all these people are pointing cameras at us?
No, not really.
No?
No, which is surprising. I never really asked. I don't know why, I just didn't.
Perhaps all those visits to court rubbed off more than anyone realised. Because ironically, 14 years later, Dakota's dream is to become a criminal lawyer.
I was doing work experience with a lawyer. He was a good friend of my dad's, so he was, like, good to work with, as he knew my family, and he knew me since I was little. So I would go into courts and watch cases, and it all just seemed really interesting. I was just really intrigued in it all.
Is it more difficult, do you think, to follow that path with the way you've been brought up?
No, I don't think so. I just think it would make it probably better because I would already have these supportive people around me, all the lawyers, things like that, the people my mum knows, my dad knew, so it would make it a lot easier.
Except that you would be absolutely on the right side of the law.
Yeah.
Yep, Carl Williams is her dad and Roberta Williams is her mum. But that doesn't mean that she can't go along and make a great future for herself and become, like we said, a prosecutor or a criminal lawyer.
Something good.
Yeah, what are we going to do? Not allow her to be a member of the bar because she's Roberta and Carl Williams' daughter? That'd be discrimination, wouldn't it?
It's March 23, 2004, and Carl is yet again in court. The Williams family are out in force. There's Dakota's mum, her uncle Andrew, even Dakota's grandma turns up.
Mr. Williams, how was your children released on bail? Oh, of course, over the moon. Should never have been there in the first place.
Carl parades his daughter in front of the media scrum. But by that afternoon, Dakota's uncle Andrew was dead, shot by another underworld figure, Mick Gatto, in self-defence.
My brother, as far as I'm concerned. That's it, Darren.
You liked him a lot, didn't you?
Loved Andrew. Andrew was my everything. Yeah, he was my everything. We were very, very close.
How close?
Close, not as others would like to say, and their misconceptions of our relationship. But yeah, we were very close, did everything together.
So when he got shot?
Yeah.
It was on your birthday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was my birthday, 23rd of March. My whole world just fell apart. Worst day of my life, Nellie.
Did you say to Carl then, listen, this is getting out of control?
We sort of went our separate ways, kind of then.
In June 2004, 3 months after Andrew's murder, Carl was arrested again, and this time charged with conspiracy to murder.
I don't know. I'm going to speak to the lawyers now to find out.
Eventually, he was charged with 4 murders, although police suspected him of more. In 2007, he pleaded guilty to 3 of them and was sentenced to 35 years jail.
This, in our view, makes him one of the worst serial murderers in the history of Victoria.
I would visit my dad and that was just like a normal thing.
What, every weekend going to jail?
Yeah.
And you just thought as a kid, this is what all kids do?
No, I didn't think that. I just thought for me, like, that's just normal.
Dakota was just 3 when she started visiting her dad in jail. She has no memory of her father ever living at home.
How did you explain to her, as a mum,
Yeah.
that her dad was in jail?
I didn't. I never did, Liam. I never explained anything. I just went with the flow and...
She must have said at some point, hey, Mum, how come
No.
we're going to this prison?
No, she never did.
I knew he wasn't home. I knew where he was. But it just didn't really cross my mind to think that of a time when he would be home.
What do you remember most about visiting him in jail?
I remember one time there used to be a whiteboard in one room and I would just play teachers, things like that.
And what sort of things did he say to you on those visits?
Make sure I'm going to school, brushing my teeth, being nice to my mum. He would always be really pedantic with that. Make sure I'm being really nice to my mum, treating her well. That was the main thing.
Do you recall ever saying, Dad, why can't you come with us?
Oh, I remember one time I was like planning it. I was like, let's get a helicopter and we'll put it on the roof and you can come with us. And
That would have gone down a treat, wouldn't it?
yeah.
At one point, both Carl and his dad, Dakota's grandfather George, found themselves together in the big house.
Pretty sure I visited them both at the same time once. Dear Dakota, well, hello there, my beautiful daughter. How are you? Good.
Apart from the contact visits, the father-daughter relationship blossomed on paper.
This is from my 8th birthday. Dakota, you mean the world to me. You are my gorgeous little princess who keeps me going through difficult times, and I love you with every inch of my heart. Always and forever, your dad.
Has he written you a poem there?
No, that one's from my grandpa.
What does he say?
You are my one and only grandchild whom I love and idolise. Baby girl, you are the best and loved so much. Don't ever forget that. Love always, Pop.
I think you must have been the only kid in the world to get 2 letters in one day from a father and a grandfather in the same prison. It's almost a soap opera, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But lovely to receive them.
Yeah.
As the years passed, the funerals began for Dakota at St. Teresa's Catholic Church. The first was her grandma, Carl's mum, Barbara, in December 2008. Dakota was very close to her nan.
Tell me a story, tell me a story, tell me a story, and then I'll go to bed.
16 months later, in April 2010, Carl was murdered in Barwon Prison's maximum security unit by fellow prisoner Matthew Johnson. Dakota was just 9 years old.
How did you break it to Dakota that her dad was dead?
I just said to her, you know how Nan's in heaven? Well, Nan wanted Dad to be with her. Dad's gone to heaven. And she said, my dad? Not my dad.
On the day of her dad's funeral, Dakota and her family arrived in a Hummer.
Do you still remember snatches of it, or?
Yeah, I still remember parts of it.
News choppers filmed from the sky. Hundreds of Gawkers turned up on the footpath.
There was a ton of media there.
Yeah, they were all standing on things to see what was going on.
Streets were closed and camera crews lined the perimeter of the church.
The funeral was extraordinary. The gold casket, the media, it was like a requiem for the mob.
Yeah, it was insane.
How did Dakota react?
Well, we kind of didn't look around at what was going on. I can say in all honesty, I went to the church yesterday and can't even remember Carl's funeral. In all honesty, I can't remember.
What have you got there, a picture of your mum and dad?
Oh, me and my dad.
It's this footage of 9-year-old Dakota striding solemnly from the church with a photo of herself and her dad that symbolises the futility of the gangland war.
The notoriety, the drugs, the gangland stuff, your life, has it all been worth it?
No. No. I hear people say often, do you miss the money, do you? No, I wouldn't take it back for the world. Destroyed my life, destroyed my world, and I wouldn't take it back for nothing on this earth.
So if you had your time over again?
I'd do things very, very differently.
You wouldn't want to be part of it?
No. The only great thing is my kids, I've got them and they keep me moving forward, but...
I didn't pick you as someone who would have regrets.
Yeah, not usually, but in this I've got to look at it like that because look at all that's happened. Regrets not only for myself, for others.
Coming up, Dakota's search for answers.
Everyone deserves to know the truth.
It's been 8 years since Carl was murdered in the maximum security unit here at Barwon Prison. Who ordered the hit on Carl?
Me and Mum discuss it all the time. I always say to her it's just still so odd what happened. It just doesn't make sense to me.
What do you think happened?
That's next on 60 Minutes.
I remember when I lost my mind.
At 17, Dhakota Williams is now almost an adult. And with this maturity, Carl's daughter has started questioning the past and her dad's murder.
Do you want answers?
I guess knowing the truth probably would and does hurt. So that would be hard to face.
Do you think, though, that what's now out in the public arena, what we think we know, is not the full story?
No, I don't think so. I guess everyone deserves to know the truth. For closure, you just want to know.
Investigations are continuing tonight.
When he was beaten to death by fellow prisoner Matthew Johnson.
How could he have been bashed to death with a weapon inside these walls?
It's been 8 years since Carl was murdered in the maximum security unit here at Barwon Prison. and Dakota is still searching for answers. She dismisses the more simple story of her father's killer, that he thought Carl was going to kill him, so he got in first. No, she agrees with more sensible observers that the underworld had a much better, stronger motive. You see, Carl had become a police informant, and they were mining him for information about a number of murders. His death protected more than one gangland secret. But for such a brutal, frenzied killing to happen under the glare of CCTV cameras and not a single guard watching for nearly half an hour reeks of serious collusion within the walls of that prison.
Me and Mum discuss it all the time. I always say to her it's just still so odd what happened. It just doesn't make sense to me.
What do you think happened?
I just think there was a lot of corruption in places that there shouldn't have been, obviously.
So Dakota's decided to write to the former Victoria Police Deputy Commissioner, Sir Ken Jones. At the time of her dad's murder, it was this head copper who was publicly asking questions about Carl's death. He's since left the police force.
It would be interesting to find out the truth and further people who could have been involved and why there was so much ignorance towards it all.
So you want to get to the bottom of it?
Yeah, it would be nice to know, just for closure for me and my mum, just to know what really happened and for people to take responsibility.
Exactly.
Senator Darren Hinch agrees.
Well, I think she makes a very good point. Somebody, I think, wanted to make sure that he bled to death before they went and saved him. So on that one, I would agree with Dakota Williams that there are a lot of unanswered questions that some people alive today could answer.
Today, Dakota is again looking forward. She's left behind her early childhood, largely spent being dragged through the bloody gangland war, and she's stepping out of the underworld shadows.
Such an unusual childhood, it's hard to believe it couldn't have a negative effect.
Well, you've met her, Liam. She's one of the most well-adjusted children I've ever come across, and to me, she is just truly amazing to have come out of all this, and she's just perfect.
Dakota Williams is adamant the historical sins of her father will not affect her future path.
I just aspire to be a good person, do good things, have a good work ethic.
That relies upon people seeing you for you, not you connected to your dad.
Yeah.
Will that be a challenge?
No, I don't think so. I know I'm going to go places. I've got backup plans. I know I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to do good things. I'm going to be a good person, which I already am.
Hello, I'm Liam Bartlett. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.